We're going to start working with colors a little bit more, and we've already done that somewhat to a degree here. And what we're going to do is change these alpha-based characteristics of the values here, red and yellow, into the hex values. Now, Visual Studio Code is giving us a few hints here as to what something is in regards to these colors, and these are the RGB values. We're going to look at those as well. But what's really more popular are the hex values. And you may wonder, well, what is the difference in using a hex value versus an RGB? And that can come down to the values you may have right there available to you. So if you have RGB values that you know you want to use, maybe you got them out of Photoshop or whatever it may be, and you don't have the hex value, you can certainly make use of the RGB value. Now, if you just Google CSS colors hex or CSS colors RGB, you'll get a lot of the colors and what those numeric values are and those hex values are. So we have red here. We want to go ahead and change this into a hex. So I'm going to just remove this, removes that little block for the red. And I am going to start off with the pound symbol. Also, if you're used to social media, that would be the hashtag symbol. The hex values always start with that. And for red, we have FF and then 4 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's always 6 characters that follow the hashtag. So you can see here we get our red back for that little block. That is a Visual Studio specific thing, so you're not likely to see that. And if you look at the source of a page that's using hex colors, that little block's not going to be there. That's just in our IDE to help us out. So if we refresh this, nothing should have changed. We still have that hex value. So for yellow, we would look that up and find out what is the hex value. So we would start with our hashtag, and yellow is kind of the opposite. So we have 4 Fs and 2 zeros. Save that. We should have the same color over here, and in fact we do. We can do a little bit more to get colors on things. What if we want a background on our page, and we want to do that up here in the styling section? So we could add an inline style here using this style keyword and supply the CSS for that. We're going to instead do it here and target the body tag. So we're targeting the body tag just as we targeted the anchor tags and the input tag up here, although we're not using attributes to make this happen. We're just going to target the color like that. So that's our key. We want a value. Visual Studio, again, helping us out with a few of these different colors. And let's just, we're going to pick a hex value again. We're going to choose, we want something that's not too dark, but also not something too flashy. So what we can do is choose silver. We're going to use a hex value. So that's a CO, a CO, a CO. We should get some confirmation from Visual Studio Code that in fact we have the right one. I think what I did here, instead of doing a CO, which is like a C0, I did the letter O. So it's a CO, CO, CO. And now we have silver. Save that and go over here and refresh. So we're getting colors on some areas, and other areas we're not quite getting that color, but you can see it's certainly having the effect. And that's just depending on how some of these divs are inheriting. So that targeted the body tag. And let's see if we want our nav. Let's go ahead and do that. We have our nav here. Go ahead and open up the braces on it. So we're targeting the nav, and we're going to target color on our nav. So in this case, we want to use the RGB. That works a little bit different, although not too different. All you have to do in that case, instead of a hashtag, you're going to use RGB, and then you're going to put the numeric values into parentheses. And I'm going to close this off with our semicolon. Okay, so the RGB value that we want for red, if we go up here and hover over this hex value, it gives us the hex value. All we have to do is click on that bar, that red bar right there. Visual Studio Code is going to give us a few different other formats. So we don't want HSL, we want to go ahead with RGB, and we can see there that we have that. So we can just copy this right here, and I'm going to change it back to its hex value and paste those values down here and remove anything extra. So we have a little bit of extra on the parentheses and semicolons. Save that. Okay, so if we go out here and we refresh our page, you can see the values are not changing for the navigation. And what's happening there is there's a little bit of inheritance going on, so we're not really getting the inheritance from the nav into the anchor tags. You can target tags inside of other tags, which is what we need to do here. So things are kind of stopping at the nav and not going into the nav any further than that. So we are going to then add an A for anchor up here, like that, save it. So now you can see we're saying the nav tags are actually any nav tags, and then we want the anchor tag inside of the nav tag. All right, so that is saved. Let's go here and do a refresh, and you can see we're getting the differences on our colors there. So that's how you can use hex values and RGB to do color formatting. In Visual Studio Code, we just have this extra additional feature of the editor, which you can flip through and you can get your hex value and your RGB value right there, and it's going to change it down here as well.